Hello Internet, and welcome to the Collective Arcana. We are a channel all about tabletop gaming, and today we're going to be going over all of the PaizoCon 2022 spoilers and teasers and announcements. If this is the kind of content you'd like to see, go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. That lets us know, what you want and what we should do. So, right at the top, let's just say I didn't do particularly great with my bingo card. Even if you count things that were just, loosely sort of referred to as being in the works but not done now, which is a very lenient way to handle your bingo card, just didn't go super great. But I did get a few things. Right at the top, let's just get this out of the way. No new classes announced, no big playtests announced. Although they were a little cagey about the possibility that we're probably most likely going to see one at GenCon this year, which is pretty standard. Usually that's what they do, except the Guns and Gears playtest was like in January or something. So normally it's GenCon, so can't be too mad at them. So we talked about what did not get announced. Let's talk about what did get announced. We're going to just sort of go in order of the books that we know are coming out. Some of them we already knew about, some of them we didn't, and I'll let you know when those are. First up is the Lost Omens Travel Guide. Now, we did know about this one. It's always good to get a little bit of extra info. Luis Loza says that this is going to be maybe the least crunchy one they've done, and that's okay. Especially after Knights of Lastwall was a very crunchy one, and I believe the next one will be as well. But that means that if you're just into the Lost Omens line solely for mechanics, you can probably skip this one. But so far, it's sounding really exciting. And again, this is, if you're not familiar with me and my channel, I am a homebrewer. I don't play in Galarian, really. So I'm still excited about this travel guide, just to have, basically just have these guide points on how to build, settlements and stuff like that and make them feel distinct by, doing what Paizo does. They're a big company. They have a whole lot of, brilliant people over there working on these things. And so why should I build from the ground up when I can just stand on the backs of giants? And so that's sort of what I plan to do. So even though it's not super mechanically heavy from a GM standpoint, there are going to be, different cultures, societies, organizations, and things like that covered, as well as different types of food, clothing, fashion, all kinds of stuff. Just things to help me give a better narrative sort of flourish whenever I'm telling my players about my world. Just stealing what they did. So I'm still pretty excited about it. We do know there will be some plot hooks and things like that as well. Local legends, as well as, getting an idea of what the average non-adventuring citizen may know about the local legends and, creatures that live around. And I think there's something really fun that I'd never really considered a whole lot there about just saying, oh, yeah, the gods are real, and you as adventurers have probably had some pretty first-hand knowledge with really wild stuff, but these regular people, if they see a troll, they're freaking out. And, you don't usually get that perspective in these sort of books, and so I'm really excited about that. The little bit of mechanics they did mention are a couple of, like a ritual, for example, where you can go to this really rare sort of bloom, and there's a ritual that surrounds this. And if you're there for this ritual, you can get a little bit of the blessings that come with that ritual, as well as a marriage ritual. So when people get married, there's this big ritual that can be done, or any sort of big life event. And then it gives you this thing that you can, this sort of floating thing of luck that you can call upon at some point in the future. It's a really fun concept and something that's really cool. And I foresee some players in my games using it. So very excited to have it. Next up, and this is the big one, this is the one we got the most information about, it's the next big rule book. It's coming out in July, which is about 2 months. We're early June right now. It's going to be coming in late July. So 2 months out, big rule book, a whole lot of stuff, way more stuff even than I was thinking we were going to get. I could not be more excited for the Dark Archive. So let's jump into what we found out. First and foremost, we have final versions of the two most recent playtest classes, the Psychic and the Thaumaturge. The Psychic is getting reworked. It had a lot of feedback regarding its Unleashed Psyche and things like that, so it's getting some bumps there. Basically, they're going to make it so that you can enter Unleashed Psyche a little bit easier, and maybe the effects of it are a little bit less highs and lows sort of things. And so to increase your average or enforce an average, as the case may be, they're raising the power of some of those special granted cantrips that you get, as well as the amps. So I think that's a really great response to the feedback that we saw. And I know that, my player who's playing a homebrew psychic sort of kineticist thing will definitely appreciate that change. He does not get to use his Unleashed Psyche very often. So that alone is going to be really good. A couple of things that really excited me is that there's one of the subclasses that we know we're getting for it. And there's a complete list. I think I've got images that I stole from the stream or from, people on Reddit who stole it from the stream. But there's one of them is a teleportation focused subclass, and the cantrip, one of the, spam at will sort of abilities they get is basically a portal gun where when you cast a spell, you set one into the portal, and then wherever you move to, or if you amp it, you just teleport to wherever you want the other end to be, and then you can sustain it for up to 1 minute so that your allies can follow behind you. So, if people who are missing the ability to take friends with them with Dimension Door, if that's really something you enjoyed doing, that option is back. The Thaumaturge has had its mechanics simplified and streamlined a bit. The biggest feedback they got with that was that everybody loved the flavor, the concept, and the feel, but the mechanics were a little bit clunky, and so they've overhauled that. They've made everything so that, like, one thing is they've, instead of using an intelligence-based recall knowledge, they've got a special charisma-based one, and it does not treat hard checks, like things that rare creatures that normally use a harder difficulty check. When you're a Thaumaturge and you're using this skill, you don't use the harder difficulty check. So if you're doing a recall knowledge on something, even the rarest, weirdest stuff, Thaumaturge is going to be better at making that check than any other class. We also know that your chosen implement is going to have a little bit of determination on what happens when you use that esoteric knowledge and the ability to apply that weakness and stuff like that. I don't know the exact terms of that. We didn't get a lot of that information, but we do know that your implements chosen are going to affect the exact mechanics of that. My understanding, and I could have misread this, is that basically you'll have like 1 or 2 set options regardless of your implement, and then your implement will give you another one that you can choose from whenever you use those features. The implements are broken up into 3 categories. A reaction one, which uses a reaction, an offensive one that is usually going to have, like the wand and the weapon. It's going to be something that you're doing, theoretically to damage your enemies. And then the last one is a debuff, which is where you're applying debuffs. I think that's a really cool, sort of way to break it down, this sort of 3x3 thing. And I think that that's going to give us a whole lot of room. And we've got the list, it may have already popped up, of what they are. And I think it sounds great. Again, the Thaumaturge, I think, needed the least amount of work in terms of concept and stuff like that with just the fiddly execution. So I'm very excited for the final version. And I have had at least 2 different people tell me that that's probably what they're going to play next. Now, Dark Archive has no new ancestries, but we do get a heritage called Reflection. It's a versatile heritage, and the idea is that through some magical mix-up or mistake or whatever else you and your GM want to come up with, you are a mirror duplicate, a clone, or a magical copy of someone. And all the ramifications that may come with that, if you were like a decoy target to protect a king who was threatened with assassination, you may look like somebody that the populace either wants to kill or is expecting to help them or, whatever. A lot of potential role play out of that. I don't know any of the fancy mechanics that we're going to get. I don't think any of the feats were teased, but just the concept alone is terrific. And we have a background that sort of already does that. And I feel like, you could definitely combine those into creating this character that's got a lot of great background intrigue that they're bringing into the game to navigate. Next up, let's talk the archetypes. I don't know for sure that this is all the archetypes. This is just all the archetypes that got teased. I know that when they've done things before, they've given us a lot, but we've still had some surprises sneak through, so definitely could happen again. What we've got is Mindsmith, which is basically an updated version of the Soul Knife from like 3.0 Psionic's Handbook sort of thing, where you just manifest this blade with your brain. Doesn't have to be a blade, actually. A weapon with your brain, and you can summon it. You can shoot it. You can shatter it so that it hits people out in a cone. And it has like a little charm of some sort, and that's how you put the runes and things like that on it. But you can also sort of focus and put some other minor effects on it in addition, with just by willing it to happen. And there are also a few feats to do utility stuff with it. Like one of them is a skill feat where you like can pole vault by turning it into like a pole or something like that. So you can get that extra length to get across a gap or something like that. And that's something that I was really hoping we would see if we got a Soul Knife. Soul Knife's been something that I've been really wanting for a long time in 2e. So I'm very excited and happy to see that they've done a little bit of that. Could always use more, but at this point, there's a lot of archetypes that could use more. But the fact that it's broken into an archetype instead of being a class means that you can probably combine it with another class to get some of the specific features that you wanted. And that's just one of the strengths of the archetype system in Pathfinder 2e. So, if this, for example, I really like the Knife to the Soul to apply those, ability score debuffs back in 3.0. And we don't have that. But if you took this archetype on top of a rogue doing sneak attack with debilitating strike, you can start to apply the enfeebled, I think they're stupefied as well, and things like that. So you can really fill in the gaps that you may feel like you're missing if you've played a Soul Knife in other editions and want to have that come back. Next up, we have a couple of archetypes that are going to sort of kind of fill a warlock void. If you like witches in concept, but not in mechanics, you like this idea of being beholden to this other entity by one means or another, and that being a sort of power source for you, then great. You don't have to be a witch, which is fun, witches are great, but maybe you just want to be more martial focused, whatever the case may be. Now we've got two new archetypes that can help fill that void. We've got Living Vessel, which is a possession themed, where the idea is something very powerful has been locked or sealed away in your body. And as you progress and take feats from it, you're finding new ways to leverage that connection, that power within you. And one thing that was noted is, the fays and demons and things like that were on the list of what was capable, possible to be, locked inside of you. And they mentioned a couple of the specific powers that, like Fae can sort of shatter into a bunch of mirror images of you, for example. But the coolest thing I think that they mentioned was that I think they said all of the possible things that could be inside of you, if you go unconscious, may make you rise again and control your body and continue the fight. And that's very interesting. I suppose it would depend what your exact dynamic is with the entity, if it would be a help or a hindrance to your allies. But it's just a really fun concept and something that everyone I've been talking to about it has just been rolling off character concepts based on it. And I'm really, really excited to see it and give that option to my players. The second sort of warlock themed is the Pact binder. This is something that we saw in the playtest of the Thaumaturge, and part of the feedback was everybody said, well, we really wish this wasn't limited to the Thaumaturge. This is really cool. And so Paizo said, okay, well, we'll expand it. We'll make it an archetype that anyone can pick up, including a Thaumaturge, if your Thaumaturge really likes it. And what it does is similar to the living vessel, but the idea is nothing's inside of you. You've just made a contract. You've made a pact with something. And sometimes that pact has, problems, you quid pro quo sort of thing, but you can also, just like the living vessel, you can sort of leverage it to gain new powers, new abilities, from as simple as, maybe to just having better influence and stuff when dealing with more of those types of creatures that you made a pact with, up to who knows what, hopefully some pretty wild stuff. And as is so often the case with archetypes, just thinking about all the different classes you could tack this onto, you could have this, so many different character concepts because, your base class is a rogue or a wizard or a barbarian or whatever the case may be. I just really love that versatility to these concepts because, I like the idea that just because you've made a deal doesn't mean that you're inherently a certain type of character. So just, again, loving that it's an archetype instead of a full class. The final two that we had teased were the Time Mage. Now, the details were a little bit fuzzy on whether this is like a or like a spellcasting dedication to pick up spells, or if it was expected you were already a spellcaster. It's a level 6, which means it's probably going to be a little more powerful than the average dedication. And I don't have a lot of details on what it does. There's a lot of assumptions we can draw. But what we do know more about is the other one, the Time Skimmer. Now, the Time Skimmer is not necessarily a caster. It's described as more you're manipulating time through little tricks that you've learned that you're capable of. They described it as a future time mage. So for that reason, I'm sort of thinking it could be something like the way that the Shadow Dancer and the Shadow Caster sort of interact, where, there's overlap in the abilities, and if you're already one, you can take the other, even if you haven't taken enough dedication feats from the first one. But I don't know. It seems likely, but I don't know. One of the things we know the Time Skimmer can do that was specifically mentioned that I really like is like charging forward to attack an enemy and then rewinding time so that you're still where you were when you started the round. So they're bleeding out of their gut and you are back safely behind your champion or wherever you wanted to be. On the subject of time, we do know that there's going to be a time oracle mystery type of thing. We don't know all the details on that. One of the things that I heard was that durations of spells on you, whether beneficial or harmful, are like halved because you're not obeying the proper rules of time. And that's really kind of fun and cool to think about the implications there. And we do know that there's going to be, I believe they said there's going to be another witch patron, but I didn't get a lot of details on what that would be. Now, we also know that there's going to be a lot of feats and possibly other archetypes, but a lot of feats for players or characters who have encountered the Cryptids. Cryptids are a big part of the Dark Archive. And those feats and things are going to be, basically the idea is you've survived an encounter and now you've got this special ability based on, your proximity to this strange creature. And while we're on that subject, let's talk about what cryptids are in this book, because as was often mentioned, in a world that has dragons and eldritch horrors and stuff, what qualifies a cryptid? So in this, there are these new creature templates that you can tack onto an existing creature, any existing creature it seems like, and it will give them new abilities, change things about them, the way that templates already do. With the idea that they're going to make them a little bit stranger. There's a rumored template that makes it a little more elusive. There's a mutation where it's going to have some feature that it shouldn't have. And then there's a primeval one, which is where it's going to be just almost like a prehistoric version of the normal creature. So just dialed up to 11. Bigger spines, plates, whatever it's supposed to have, but more. There could be others. Those are just the 3 that I heard mentioned. And that's pretty exciting and pretty cool. As somebody who, loves the idea of, just what my players are fighting this week is just a crocodile that's like too big, like Lake Placid big. I really like having mechanics to just drop that on a creature. And anything that we have to adjust creatures is always good because, every template we have is functionally adding that many more creatures to the bestiary. Back over to the player side of things, there are going to be deviant abilities. These are feats that give you special supernatural abilities that are not quite spells, but are definitely weirder in flavor than a normal feat would allow. And the idea is that you just have this strange ability that no one's really sure why. And I think that's really cool. I don't know if there will be a limit, like, you have to take this at level 1, or if it's something that you can pick up later, who knows. But it's a really interesting concept. Additionally, we know that your player can get cursed. Oracles already have curses, and these are going to work similar, where there's going to be detrimental effects, but there's also going to be positives to the point where, rather than it be the type of curse you want to immediately get rid of, it could be the kind of curse that you build your character around and keep it and have those roleplay opportunities as well as those mechanical opportunities that it gives you. And this means that if you really wanted to, you could be an Oracle who keeps picking up more curses. I know that a lot of people were disappointed that the 2e Oracle really just has like the one set mystery and curse that they get. Congratulations, everybody. You can now double up on horrible cosmic weights on your shoulders if that's what you're into. And finally, for the Dark Archive, we know that each chapter is going to have a related sort of mini adventure in it, and you can drop that into your campaigns as a standalone into your game, or have it be part of a larger story arc of paranormal investigators if you want to connect them all together. And we know that there are also going to be a number of additional little case files spread throughout little things that can act as story hooks or plot inspiration for GMs or players. All right, next up is the Lost Omens Impossible Lands. This is going to be our next big Mwangi Expanse style deep dive. This is coming in, I believe, late November. We are going to get 5 new ancestries. We are going to get Gorons, which are these beautiful living plant people, like taller, less silly, more glorious sort of leshies. We know that in world they're known to grow wings, like made of leaves and stuff. So expect that as a feat, probably around level 13. We're also getting Kashrishi. I could have said that wrong. I'm almost certain I did. But Kashrishi, they are these powerfully built rhino folk who are said to have some sort of psionic ability. How that's going to manifest, I don't know. Most likely, I'm guessing, sort of innate occult spells, but who knows what they'll do. They appear medium-sized, but are very stocky and maybe shorter, like dwarves, that kind of build. Which is definitely interesting. Psychic rhinos, who doesn't want that? Next, we're getting the Gaji. These are serpent folk, complete with fangs and, serpent, or like cobra hoods, I'm sure, depending on which type of, heritage you go with. Now, if we could just get some not turtles in here, I can complete my sort of reptilian-themed nation that has all different kinds of reptiles. Luckily, we have beastkin, so it's not like I need to have that necessarily. I really love that they released that soon enough, and now... And let's just talk about that for a minute. I was very worried when we got beastkin that was going to be sort of their catch-all, and they weren't really going to focus too much more on animal-type ancestries. And so I'm very happy to see that that's not been the case. We've got rhino people and snake people so far, and we're not done. Because next up we have Vanara. These are simian people from Vudra, I think, originally. I personally have been waiting for the Vanara for a really long time. I think this is really my last big thing that I personally really wanted. My players and stuff also have stuff they really want, so by all means, Paizo, keep cranking stuff out. But for me, I mean, this is the last race, or ancestry rather, that I was really excited to get, so very happy to get my hands on that soon. Finally, we have another sort of kind of serpent folk people in the Vishkanya. Again, probably have mispronounced that. But these are serpent folk of a different variety in that they appear human until you get up close. And then you notice that they have very tiny, fine scales instead of normal skin. And they have strange eyes, maybe fangs and things like that, and a forked tongue. But I think and they do mention that if you want to, you can have different colored patterns and stuff like that. So if you do want to be a little weirder with it, you can. But generally speaking, they can pass as just normal humans in society. And that's good because they probably have they probably deal with a lot of bad press because they have poisonous blood. Now, we also know that there are going to be some more feats, some expansions to existing ancestries and heritages, with Geniekin noted specifically. While no new heritages will appear, it was noted that something along those lines would be in this book. My guess is we might see a new lineage, or maybe a lineage for each of the 4 elements within Geniekin, or something like that. We're also going to see some new and returning from first edition, so new to second edition deities, as is normal for these sort of books. Now, this is noted to be a much more mechanics and player option heavy book. It's going to have the archetypes, equipments, and rituals and things like that tied to the region. But we'll also be getting lots of political intrigue and plot hooks around the region and the countries and how they interact with each other. Not a lot of good blood in some of those cases. A lot of bad blood would be, I would say, a lot of butting heads. But we're also going to get important NPCs and organizations, I'm sure. And I expect an expansion to the Student of Perfection archetype that we already have, for example, just because apparently this is the origin point for that particular monk order. Next up, the last thing we're going to talk about today is in February, we're getting a new rule book called the Treasure Vault. Now, at first look, this is just going to seem like it'll just be another big item compendium. And it is, in fact, that. But as we've learned with Grand Bazaar, just because an item or a book is being billed as being a whole bunch of items does not at all mean that's all you should expect to see in that book. With 400-ish new items, including several new and returning base weapons and armors, there will be some entirely new categories of items, including specifically alchemical items. But it's also going to have new crafting options. That's right. Something that one of the biggest and hardest to argue with criticisms of Pathfinder2e has been that the crafting system is maybe a little bit lacking for a player side of things. And that was good reason design-wise, because in 1e and pretty much any edition that has thorough crafting rules, it's very hard to prevent players from just exploiting them to the point of breaking the economy. So I don't blame them for wanting to work a little longer on it and present them not as core options, but as optional optional rules, sort of things that a GM can decide to include or not. And that's what's going to happen. There's going to be several. Most likely we'll see things like from the playtest where lower level items you could craft quicker. One thing that was mentioned was being able to craft an entire set of 10 arrows overnight if you need to. And I think everyone can agree that stuff like that should be quicker and easier. The rules that we have now are great for creating big, impressive magic items that are going to be very impactful, but they were lacking in things like, taking 4 days to build a club, for example, just to bash an enemy over the head. So that's something that I'm really excited to see, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be excited about as well. My understanding is it's going to be a few different optional rules that may be able to interact with each other, or you may just sort of be picking one or the other, or combining them. I don't really know the details there. I just know that it's going to have a few different options for different tables so that you as a GM can customize how crafting is going to work at your table. Now let's go back to what I said about alchemy, because crafting isn't the only thing getting a second look in this book. Alchemy in general and the alchemist class in specific is getting an overhaul. This is kind of weird. This is functionally going to be errata, where they're going to try to make a few little changes to the alchemist by both doing tweaks to the subclasses that are not bomber. My understanding is they think bomber's okay. It's the chirurgeon and the others that need a little bit of help. So we're going to see some changes there. What the scope of those is, it's almost a year away still, so we really don't know. But between the new types of items and these little tweaks, I expect we're going to see alchemists playing a lot different come February. And that's a little weird to have errata in a book like this. I do hope that Paizo will release a free PDF with these alchemist changes, not necessarily the new items or anything unless they're integral to it, but certainly these changes that are going to be blanket across the class, I hope those will be available free. Now, technically, it's definitely less of an issue since Paizo, is strengthening their partnership with the Archives of Nephis. You can go and you can get the rules there, but it would feel a little weird not to have these base core rulebook class options not available as a free download for anybody who doesn't want to have to be constantly on the archives or whatever for their character, but something they can just print out, have it look like an official supplement of some sort. Hopefully. Again, not a big deal since they're so free with their rules and everything. It'd be very different if they were a company that did not have those rules readily available to everyone. Final note on the new alchemist stuff, they did mention flamethrowers. Hopefully not just flame. Hopefully we can get lightning throwers and acid throwers and all that stuff. And I really like this direction towards the alchemist of saying here are not just your bombs and things like that, but if you don't necessarily want to bomb, I like this idea that we're getting other weapons and equipment that they can use, and things that will be based on their alchemy save instead of an attack roll, because their alchemy save is oftentimes going to be a little bit better than the DCs, especially after the first round of errata that we saw. So their DCs on their items are going to naturally scale a little bit better than their attack rolls, and so by having this, that means that alchemist is just in general going to be a little bit better, at least. And as somebody who has seen a really high-level skill player play an alchemist, that's scary, because I've always had this feeling the alchemist is doing just fine, because I played in a party with one who was very proficient. And so seeing more of that come into the class, lowering that barrier of entry to be a successful alchemist, I'm very excited about, because as much as I love the idea of certain classes being a little bit harder, I don't want any of them to be so hard that I would steer somebody away from playing it. And I hope this is the sort of change, because right now I would never encourage a new player to play an alchemist, and hopefully these changes are going to be ingrained enough in how the class works that I'd feel a little better recommending it to a new player. So that's it for the PaizoCon wrap-up. I'm very excited. I could not be more excited, really. There's so many. I did not expect to get the Mindsmith, my soul knife stand-in. I really did not expect it. I'm so excited about it. I've got 3 different characters just on that archetype, let alone everything else that's come out that I just really want to do and play with. And so what are you most excited about, though? There's a lot of things, and I know talking to my players and going over everything with them and people over at the Discord, everybody's very excited about different things, and so I really want to hear from you. So come down to the comments and let me know. Also, what do you hope is the next setting for the Lost Omens books? I'm holding out for Tian Sha or Darklands. Either one, those are my 2 favorite picks, as I mentioned in the other video. But really, just any more of this world, getting deep dive is going to be good for everybody. Thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate it. Have a great day, and welcome to Collective. We'll see you next time.